When discussing any game mechanic, logically the people in favour of it need to make an argument for its existence. So a trivial example, I can justify the existence of a health bar as without it everyone would be immortal. Likewise, a stam bar is necessary to stop players from fainting all day. In pub games, I can justify health regen. It's not fair to win an engagement, push forward and meet the freshly respawned enemies whilst you have low HP. But for the planned ranked last team standing in 1v1 ladders, there is no respawning and therefore there is no good reason to have health regen in these competitive modes. I've heard some arguments attempted but none of them really stand up. So next, let's break down how health regen affects each possible engagement. Now before we go on, I'm not making the argument to make health regen slower to take effect or limited to bandages, because doing so suggests that health regen bears any merit, which it doesn't. Likewise, for the team scenarios, we're going to assume that the distances allow players to attempt full regens. In a densely packed engagement, health regen would be impossible and therefore not relevant to the discussion, as in these scenarios health regen is effectively disabled anyway. Let's look at 1v1s first. Health regen encourages players to disengage after taking damage. This happens regularly through methods such as capitalising on particularly large knockbacks, 180ing away from the enemy, kiting map obstacles that interrupt chase mechanics such as the columns and contraband, and even climbing out of the map. This results in duels regularly getting full reset, sometimes even multiple times per duel. A single duel can last several minutes, largely in part due to health regen. Players are punished for attempting to chase down a player who's going for a regen, because doing so requires you to sprint and also to attack. Both of these actions interrupt your stamina and your health regen whilst your opponent gains both. The gameplay this produces is bad across the board. It's not fun to play against someone who routinely runs away to regen. It's not fun for the player that knows his best chance to win is to delay the fight to heal up. It's bad for potential audiences who end up watching a long drawn out fight that should have ended several minutes ago. And it's a nightmare for anyone casting a match if it's in a tournament setting. Keep in mind what we're competing with here. Most first-person competitive scenes are used to kills taking place in a split second, so it's a complete no-brainer to remove anything that encourages players to play passively for minutes at a time. One person told me that they enjoy watching a close duel get reset multiple times. If that's true, I would imagine they're in the vast minority. Most people enjoy watching close fights. Apparently this person enjoys watching a loading bar move. Rather than show any more gameplay for the rest of this video, I'm just going to film a virus scan instead, and that one guy's going to find it thrilling, I'm sure. There are no upsides to having regens and duels. One potential argument is that regens can negate lucky hits, but this is an argument against instant hits rather than removing health regen. These unreadable hits are a separate issue, and they should be addressed separately without encouraging players to back away after every stab is taken. Next up is 2v2 last team standing. The potential engagements we get are 1v1s and 2v1s, and I've already established that health regen is bad in duels. If both duels end at roughly the same time, we usually end up with both players fully regenning, which negates the impact of the dead players who could have potentially taken their opponent down to a lower HP, and the match slows down for another boring full reset. The other possible scenario is a 2v1, where health regen is most easily cheesed. So let's say that you deal damage to someone teaming against you in a 2v1. He can now back away from the fight and regen back to full health whilst his teammate distracts you with slow morph to drags, feints and other time wasting behaviour. Not only is the regenning guy getting all his health back, he can also hang around behind you threatening to re-engage and hit you whenever he pleases, and you have very little control to chase him down without opening yourself up to the person you are currently duelling. The result is an extremely oppressive tag team 1vx system which contributes to the current unlikelihood of winning against multiple opponents. They have access to a mechanic that you can't utilise at all. Now, if you do get a kill, you're rewarded with health, giving you that extra boost to win the duel against the last player, who has not received any health, so regen isn't really necessary here for you to make a clutch. Without health regen, the optimal move for the two teammates is to push hard against the one solo player simultaneously, regardless of their risk of being taken out by one blow. This leads to more exciting, true 2v1 clutches, rather than either flat out dying or maybe winning slow, successive duels versus health tag teamers who continuously take turns backing away. The final mode is 3v3 LTS, which brings similar predicaments. The fight can separate into two separate 2v1s. If both lone players die at roughly the same time, the impact of each is usually completely negated by the regen, as the lower HP team will obviously back away to regen to full. Remember, just because in some instances the distance may be short enough for health regen to not kick in, that doesn't justify the existence of the mechanic at all. We are looking purely at scenarios where health regen has an impact. There's one last edge case scenario in a 3v3 where you win a 2v1 and you see your teammate die in his duel, leaving you to duel the last enemy. Now in this scenario, you've received 2 health on kill boosts, so further regen is probably not that necessary for you to win. Even if you scrape through the 2v1 in this scenario, it's so rare compared to the instances where health regen restricts a clutch play, it's not really worth addressing. In most situations where 1vx has been successfully completed, you have won the round, so again, no regen is needed. As I've demonstrated, health regen brings a plethora of negative aspects to the competitive scene, without any upside. I'll now address the few counter-arguments people have attempted to bring up. Projectiles might be cancer because you can't regen after taking a hit. This is a terrible argument because the implication is that projectiles are therefore currently useless in LTS, because by this logic you can regen the damage taken every time. If that's the case, why are projectiles even in comp if they have no impact? I can't imagine projectiles of any nature would see serious use in duels or the 2v2 ladder, because they're easy to parry with only 1 or 2 people to keep track of, and they wouldn't be worth spending the points on. No serious team would run 1 archer and 1 melee, as the 2v1 melee would be over in seconds, and even if such a setup turned out to be broken, the damage or point values could easily be adjusted accordingly. There's no need to negatively impact the entire melee side of the game just to cater to the potential projectile threat. Another point people bring up is just make the map smaller, bro. Whilst this solves the issue, it does so at the cost of map diversity, and largely dances around the issue without addressing why health regen is even needed. The last attempt at a counter is that a lack of health regen would encourage players to back away after landing a hit and play defensively. If playing defensively was so important, then surely neither player would have engaged in the first place and would all just squat on either side of the map. We aren't some advanced AI, we actually want to kill each other. I probably won't discuss this topic further, partly because it's so self-evident I shouldn't have to be making this video in the first place, and secondly, I've already covered just about every facet of the debate. If someone actually manages to present a sensible counter-argument that I've missed, then I'll gladly respond to it.